a lot of we got to talk with a lot of local people, but many of them, they do not know about the information. They did not receive information about the dam project. Um, Even the design, it is going to be benefit or not, what uh, so on and so forth. They did not get any information about it. And even the way the one village is called Wansala village, it is very close to the only 19 miles away from the project site. But the company did not, they are not being consulted by the EIA company, by the developer, by the government. And in this area, it's also a restricted area. No one is allowed to go in. So in that area, building the dam is a very risk, and in terms of security, in terms of job opportunity, everything, it is not going to benefit to the local people. That's why I against the Mungton Dam project. But I do not against all the development project. What I'm trying to say here is we need inclusive development that create social well-being, the positive peace, the sustainable ecosystems, as well as economic growth. More important thing is the dam developer, the government, they should respect the local people. They should consider the voices of the people. It is the more important aspect that I want to say whenever the development project is going to be built. The priority is they should respect the local people. They should include the voices of people and get the consent from the people who are living there. Yeah, from my last point, I think now today we are meeting here at the webinar. The reason is because of the pandemics. Yeah, what the lesson learned, what I got from the pandemics, COVID-19, is that the centralized economic system and the centralized governance system doesn't function very well. In this difficult time, our government, many government, including Myanmar government, they could not support the basic needs of the people or their own citizens. In Myanmar, the protection method, the prevention measure, and the rehabilitations are done by the people, for people at the grassroots level. And for the small, the small farmer, the small scale farmer, they do not affect that much compared to other sector, because they have their own food systems. And yes, small scale, small is beautiful as usual, but the big scale mono plantation, mono agriculture, they are the most affected sector, because during the lockdown period, they cannot commute their products. They could not send the product to, they could not across the border, and there are some demands to buy the product, but since the lockdown, they could not send their products. And yeah, I would say that it's the large scale mono agriculture. They are the most affected in our country. And the major people in the city, they are also suffering a lot from the COVID-19, because they have no jobs. As a consequences, there is no money, and I think they are very difficult for to have adequate. Yeah, yeah. It is a warning sign that we. I think we need to change the way of our living. The way of our living and our governance systems. Now we are living in the world that interconnected to each other. It is the time for us to support each other and to create the world that we want to live in. Like now, let me wrap before I wrap up, let me say the last word that now it is the time to create positive peace, which is a mean of address the root cause of the problems for justice and to satisfy the basic needs. Yeah, it is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Shining.
Hello.
Always a pleasure to see and hear from you. And thank you so much for joining with us today to tell us about the lived experience of people in the Salween Basin in Myanmar, in Shan State. And if someone is fortunate enough to be in a breakout room with Shining later, feel welcome to ask her questions. So we would move now to Dr. Nguyen Minh Quang from the south of Vietnam, Can Tho University. I believe he's here. And he will tell us about the Mekong River that already has quite a bit of development. The Salween River currently has no hydropower dams on it and is relatively rural compared to parts of the Mekong River, especially in the Vietnam Delta.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for your introduction. And very good morning, everyone. And very good afternoon, good evening to those who are from other time zones. I'm so happy, excited to attend this conference today. My name is Quang. I'm from Can Tho University and co-founder of the Mekong Environment Forum, working in the lower Mekong area. And we are working to support the local communities and ecosystems in response to climate change and the negative impacts from the Mekong upstream dams. Today I'm going to talk about how the Mekong upstream dams and climate change at the same time pose negative impacts on the Mekong Delta, and how the local farmers and Vietnamese government respond to those impacts. You may hear about the negative impacts from the dams in on the lower communities and livelihoods in Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the situation in Cambodia. Recent scientific evidence and figures show that the natural fish catch has a rapid drop since in the 2012. Around 70–80% of the natural fish catch in the Tonle Sap has been lost due to the dams, and 80% of the natural fish catch in the Mekong Delta has been lost from 2015 to 2019, when the Nosato dams in China was operated in 2012. And during the drought season 2019 and 2020, Chinese dams has tapped on the water, which pretty much water average higher than they really need, and that's caused the severe drought in the lower Mekong, including part of Thailand, Cambodia, and especially in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And when the Mekong water, has been decreased seriously, the seawater came farther into the delta, and the sea level rise and the salt water gets. The salt water intrusion gets much farther inland, around 70 and 115 kilometers from the coast, and cause dire economic and agricultural impacts in the Mekong Delta. And I'm going to talk about the climate change impacts. We have witnessed increase in the average temperature around 0.7 Celsius degrees. Sorry. In the periods of 2010 and 2018, and the sea level rise is about 0.3 centimeters per year. And we also experienced the severe El Nino effect that gets the drought season longer and longer in recent years. Every year, the Mekong Delta has lost around 800 hectares of the mangrove forest due to the sea level rise and the floods caused by the climate change impacts. And around 14.5% of the migrants from the Mekong Delta, around approximately 20,000 or 24,000 people a year, have to leave the delta to move to the big cities like Ho Chi Minh City in search of new jobs because their livelihoods, their crops has been eroded by the sea level rise and drought and water seawater intrusion. So when the impact of the dams connect with the impact of the climate change, that's called dire dire economic and humanitarian impacts in the Mekong Delta. And right now, the Vietnamese government and many other international NGOs and foreign organizations are working together to build a long-term strategy to help the local environment, the local people to respond, to cope with those issues, and to sustain the local ecosystems. And my NGO, Mekong Environment Forum, is also working with those partners to, to have the local farmers and implement sustainable agricultural strategy that can help the local farmers cope with climate change and the lack of water caused by the Mekong dams, and also restore the environment and protect the local ecosystems. I just sent you the link of my research article about local strategies. The Vietnamese government have tried to have the local farmers, local people to respond to the environmental changes, but not many of their climate policies get successful in recent years. While waiting for the support from the Vietnamese government and other international organizations, some local farmers around the delta have develop and implement their strategy that grew successful and grew potential to have the potential to scale up. So in the article that I just sent to you, we resented and discussed some new strategies supported by the Mekong Environment Forum to help the local farmers. From the last year, 2019, the Mekong Environment Forum, under the support from Internews Agent and other donors, have developed a network of citizen science. We try to build a network of citizen scientists and citizen journalists to raise the local voice and to have the experts, scientists, the government and international communities understand the local situation through the local voices and understand the local needs, so that they can grasp and implement the policy that that can meet the local needs and really helps cause the positive impacts on the local environment and local livelihoods. Another issues I could tell you that we see it, a mass migrations in the Mekong Delta right now, especially during the drought seasons. A but we also understand that the environmental changes in the Mekong Delta are driving another ways of mass migrations across the borders. For example, the Vietnamese Cambodians in Cambodia have in recent years moved back to Vietnam, and some other part of Vietnam, we see the ethnic minority groups have moved to Cambodia or Laos instead of just because of the roads and especially those people living in the downstream community where their crops and their land has been flooded by the dams. They tend to move to other cities. So in the next 5 years or so, when the ASEAN communities rules fully gets into effect, more and more people in Asian countries can, across the border to find new place, better place for their life and better place for their jobs. So this may cause social disorder and the ethnic and social conflicts due to the competition of jobs, education, and other issues. So those are perhaps the future impacts of the change barrier, impacts of the climate change and Mekong dams. Thank you very much for your listening, and I would love to discuss with you all more about these programs.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Appreciate you coming very much. We'll have a question for you in a moment. Next, we will hear from our friend, Dr. Warasuk. She is director of many different things for Earth Rights International in Thailand. And I believe she will speak with us about the basin, both the Mekong and Salween basins.
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, good morning or good evening, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to be speaking at this forum. So I will be talking about a little bit about the trend of business and human rights in the connection, in the context of Southeast Asia, and also some key issues of the human rights abuses. And I will also highlight about corporate governance. So from what Shining and Dr. Kwang have talked about, we have noticed a pattern of unjust development that taking place in Southeast Asia context, and those raise like alarming concern for us all. First of all, in the direction of those development projects is going ahead without inclusive participation from impacted communities, especially direct impacted communities who will be relocated because of the hydropower development project in the context of Mekong mainstream dams or Salween river development, or those who are impacted by, for example, extractive industry projects in Myanmar or in Cambodia. So Shining asks a very critical question: development for whom? Who benefit from this kind of development? So I will be like coming from the perspective of kind of challenging the narrative of development for all. So I asked, is development for all or just a privileged few? Through my work monitoring large-scale development project with Earth Rights International through the past 5 years, and with Oxfam America and Oxfam Australia in the past 10 years regarding the business conduct of investor in Southeast Asia region. So we have noticed a number of issues and human rights abuse and also problems. First of all, so in Southeast Asia, development contracts where Earth Rights International have been working on in order to monitoring large-scale investment projects such as spatial economic zone being developed in Myanmar, extractive projects in Cambodia, coal mining power plant in Laos, and other parts of Southeast Asia. I've seen and recognized the complex patterns of business misconduct, poor community participation, and human rights abuses across our development projects such as the dam and coal. Those problems actually stem from maybe the business and their willingness to engage. It's a little lacking, and also when the engagement take place, for example, the context of public participation, it became like tokenistic. It's just a tick box, okay, if the investor have to conduct the project somewhere, for example, in Cambodia, certain consultation have to take place, or extractive project in Myanmar, certain consultation have to take place, but the quality of the participation is not there. There are a number of times that our like organization, civil society and NGOs scrutinize, first of all, the process of public participation, and second of all, the quality of environmental impact assessment, which doesn't include any direct impacted communities. The quality is quite poor, or copy and paste from certain projects. We have seen of these problems in our region, and cause huge concern for us. And we ask the questions like, what would be the responsible business conduct? And how are we going to promote this in order to ask the investor to engage better? I will be pointing out like 2 or 3 examples based on my direct experience working in the past 5 years. The first one is the Dawei Special Economic Zone in Myanmar, in Tahintahi region. This is one of the, let's say the second probably on the plan. The first one is Pilawa Special Economic Zone, which is not far from Yangon. This is the second one raised in the eastern side of Myanmar. Through the development that taken place by the Thai investor, basically, in the cooperation with Myanmar government, there are a lot of issues associated with land grabbing, forced eviction, poor compensation and remedies provided to the impact communities. The way Special Economic Zone from our study would directly impacted 43,000 residents in Tahintahi region, and most of whom have not received enough information about the project impacts at all. When the project is going to take place, it's been developed in stages. So the land grabbing, the land clearance has been done, but now we are waiting for like other things to come on board. For example, the industrial complex, oil refineries, and all this in one place. You could imagine like how disastrous it might be. Only 8% of those affected community consent to the project before it began, and less than 1/3 of those affected received information about the government or developers which developer from Thailand. It's been changing, and then through several concessions. Many of the communities in this Dawei Special Economic Zone are speaking out against what they see as land grabbing, abuses, and also exploitation of their resources, which supporting their like land-based livelihood. All these are going to be damaged and happen if the Dawei Special Economic Zone is going ahead. So Earthrights been working with local NGO and frontline communities to bring the case of the Dawei Special Economic Zone to Thailand, which is the home country of the Thai investor, right? And this complaint submission is about leveraging the issues of concerns in Thailand. Complaint submission via the non-judicial mechanisms such as the mechanism of National Human Rights Commission to investigate the case of Thai investment in Myanmar. And the complaint talk about the Thai developers and investors that have been engaging in like environmental and human rights violations, including the violations of the indigenous communities, land rights, and the rights to information and proper consultation. The other example that I'm going to talk about is hydropower, actually, the case that you probably heard in international media a bit about the dam collapse in Lao PDR, probably 2 years now. This is the case of Sepayan Senamoy Dam in Laos, also invested and backed up by Thai investors. Thousands disappear overnight, lost their life. 5,000 have lost their livelihoods. This is the case of dam collapse. Since the incidents of dam collapse, compensation and remedies have not been discussed at all. Communities are living in tents and they have suffered most from trauma, from losing their relatives and couldn't find, for example, their families. These are indigenous communities living in the remote mountain of Lao PDR, and they are indigenous Bru who have relied on the river-based livelihood for their life. The cause of the dam collapse was investigated though, and the finding indicated the dam built on the sinkhole actually. This is supported by the US academic researcher that through the National Assembly, National Assembly, if I get the name right. The poor quality of the infrastructure and the huge lack of compliance to standards, environmental, social, safeguard standards are the main root cause. On top of that, there's a huge lack of effective and accessible grievances redress mechanism for the community that help the community to get access to remedies. Because of, as we know, the restricted political context of Lao PDR, getting access to the information about the project and the impacts, it's extremely very hard already. Now we demanding for compensation and remedies, so you could imagine what the situation be like. What I demonstrate from those two cases, actually I would like to point out the importance of human rights due diligence in business. And I think this is a prime responsibility of the business to conduct proper human rights impact assessment at the beginning of the project cycle, engaging the communities, move beyond tokenistic participation, really engage and paying time on addressing community concerns and interests, and these processes have to be well documented over time as well. Due diligence, to my perspective, is all about, first of all, disclosing information about the project impacts for the public access and comments. More importantly, how the company and investors address human rights violations that early identify is very important. Disclosing information is first one, undertaking human rights impact assessment is the other thing that inform due diligence, and creating risk management plan to address those impacts, and even conducting meaningful consultations with the impact communities. So the issue that I just raised are kind of patterns of unjust development that we see in Southeast Asia context. How we all could address these issues, I'm sure you would like to share your perspectives later on. Lastly, I would like to actually talk about the case of Salween River Basin that Shiny has referred to. This is also one of the tie-back investment as well, and a number of Mekong mainstream dams which located in Laos that will be impacting the downstream countries such as Cambodia and Vietnam that Dr. Kwang are talking about. So among our civil society and NGO in the region, we form our group to monitor Thai investment boards and like extraterritorial obligation, the obligation beyond Thai jurisdiction. And we've been monitoring the Thai investor for like a number of years now. We see common issues that I just raised, online grabbing issue, enforced eviction, and human rights violation that take place. Most of our projects that we monitor, such as the Special Economic Zone in Myanmar, extractive industry project in Cambodia, coal mining and power plant in Lao PDR and in Myanmar, these are just to name but a few. So lastly, we recommend we engage with those investors, enter into a dialogue. It's part of our negotiation to address some of the issues. But litigation, like filing lawsuit, is also the other thing that Earthrise International has been experienced with, using litigation as a main strategy to leverage community concerns and demanding compensation and remedies. These are just the introduction of my work, and happy to answer a number of questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. We're going to move into breakout rooms in less than a minute. Before we do that, I wanted to just tie things together a little bit. It's difficult for people, I think, sometimes who don't work in environment to understand how environment issues are connected to peace building or to conflict. And we heard Shining talking about a river basin that has no big development on the main stem of the river yet. We heard Quang talk about massive dislocation in the Mekong River in the lower basin, loss of land, loss of 70 to 80% of the fish stocks, and 24,000 people a year being dislocated. The Vietnam Delta holds about 22 million people, and that area is expected to almost entirely disappear by the end of the century due to climate change and sea level rise. So in addition to the impact that might create, the instability that might create, it's important to the people that are living through that now. And finally, Laura spoke about outbound Thai investment and efforts to monitor that and regulate that. So the questions that we're about to pose to you for the breakout rooms kind of revolve around that. Is the small scale mitigation that's happening in the lower Mekong region and the Mekong Delta at the local level, is that mitigation going to be enough? Will it affect the disappearance of the Mekong Delta? Will this monitoring of outbound investment change these big impacts like the mainstream dams that are already there upstream or climate change? So this is part of our question about development for whom. So the questions for your breakout room will appear in the chat momentarily, and then our tech people will split us up into breakout rooms until 50 minutes past the hour, to hear about your local context.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you, speakers. Thank you so much, Quang, Shining, and Bora. I think this topic is timely now than ever. If you have not heard the news, Rotary has added environment to one of their 7th area of focus. So you're on right track. So with that, we'll take any questions if you may have for the panelists while we wait for the breakout rooms. Otherwise, you can also type the questions in the chat box. So if it goes unanswered, we will come back together at the end of these whole breakout sessions to revisit all these questions, and if possible, to address as many questions. All right?
So I think everybody sees the questions in their chat now, and we will now open the breakout rooms for everybody. Please enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
So while we are waiting, if you have questions for our panelists, you can put them in the chat on the side. If you're curious about to hear more about their local context. I have a question for Quang, actually. For people who are not familiar with the Mekong Basin, when you talk about the loss of 70 to 80% of the fish in the Tonle Sap Lake in Cambodia, or a similar amount of loss in the Mekong Delta, it might not be clear to people what does that mean? Why is it? How important is
that? Are we in a group now, or have you been assigned to a group? Not yet, right?
No, so Andrew and Rama, I did not assign you to any group, but if you want, you can go in any group that you want.
So they're all in groups?
Yeah, everybody else is in groups, right?
So how do we go into a group?
So we've
It should have an option for breakout rooms on the bottom of your screen.
I thought we were all still in the main room.
Yeah, we're all still in the main room, but everybody else is gone.
Okay.
So who
all
are
the facilitators and all the participants are gone.
Alejandra, Barbara, Sarita, and Sherry, are they new joiners?
They've been assigned to breakout rooms, but they haven't clicked on their invite to join it yet.
Okay, great.
So I think they do not wish to join.
Oh, maybe they're not aware.
So we're coming back at 50 minutes past the hour, so another 20 minutes.
another 20 minutes, and you want us to send a 5-minute warning, right?
Yes, please.
Reminder. Yes,
Somewhere,
please.
whatever it is. Yeah. I still
Yeah,
don't
we
see the
got that.
breakout room
Do
option.
you want me to just send you into some room? I can just send you an invite to go into a room right now.
Let me see who's here.
Easy if it makes easier.
Yeah, sure. So I'll send you in different breakout rooms. Have fun.
Okay.
Hello, Sarita. I'm going to room
Hi,
4.
hi
See you
there.
later.
Hi. Andrew, how are you? Hi, everybody. You can assign me to any rooms.
Um, Hi, Ma'am Sarita. I think you've been assigned to a room already. Do you not see an invite?
No, that's what I was waiting for.
Okay, so I'll send you one again. Sorry. Do you see it now?
No worries. Yes, let me see it now.
Thank you. Please enjoy the discussion.
Amishi, did you invite also Laura and Barbara?
Yeah, everybody's been invited. It's only you and me who are unassigned
Okay.
to the room. But they haven't joined for some reason.
Okay.
So Helen, Mio and Hitet, thank you for joining the session. I think I just assigned you to breakout rooms. So everybody else is in a breakout room having a small discussion right now. If you wish to join, you can just join the breakout room. But if you wish to stay back here and wait for the speakers to come back, we can do that as well. Please let me and Giovanni know if you need any help. Thank you. Hi, Mio. So, okay, Mio's in a breakout room. Hi, Cardi and Tamara. So everybody else is in breakout rooms right now, having discussions with facilitators. I assigned both of you to breakout rooms as well. If you want, you could join them or you could wait here. Everybody's going to be back in around 4 minutes.
Okay, I'll just wait.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Hi, good morning.
Very good morning, good evening, good night to some of you from different time zones. So I hope you all had a fantastic breakout session. We had to keep it really quick and short. So this is another opportunity for you to actually ask any questions, while Andrew would probably have a quick summary and we'll be sharing it eventually. Yeah.
Yes, I think we'd like to hear if you have a reporting person from your breakout room. This would be a great time to raise your hand so we can hear what happened in your breakout room. And Amishi can help us hopefully select who was from which breakout room.
Sure.
Okay, so maybe we can start with breakout room 1. Aaron was the facilitator for this room. So can you let us know who will be giving us the summary?
Just due to how the situation was going with some of the people in my group, I ended up becoming the reporter for it, just so we actually could report back. I guess the main thing, like through all the questions we discussed and everything, was give, I guess, local people more of a voice. So the very first question we had was, if I can just get it, like based on like positive peace, community rights, justice for all, looking at what environmental rights, policies, practices, or cultural norms are necessary for positive peace. And for positive peace, it's definitely you got to look at, you know, your structures, your attitudes, and all your different like little norms within a said society. And to achieve different kinds of peace, I guess you do need to address the like little voices and give them more of a voice. We had one with, I think it was Myanmar, where a lot of the government policies just went straight over the minorities who were in like these little local areas. And that they, like, when we went to the second question, when are we looking at development for who, like redefining the definition of development. For the government, development was putting like hydro dams and putting like coal mines and all that in these areas. but it wasn't necessarily development that benefited the community at all. It just benefited the big corporations, which wasn't exactly justice for all, creating that positive peace sort of framework. It just creates more money for corporations and less environmental progress. And the same again when we had another one from California, when they have droughts, it was looking at where do you distribute water when, you know, you can have the infrastructure and everything to get the water into these drought-stricken countries, but depends who has the political power, depends on where that water is going to go. And it just shows the difference between the two countries.
Thank you. Amishi, who's next?
Thank you, Aaron. So breakout room 2, Hillary was the facilitator for us.
Yes, so I'm also the reporter for my group. So we had a really rich discussion. We only managed to get to the first question, but it was very interesting. So we talked about, for example, post-conflict environment in Sri Lanka, having to do with mining activities and the community coming together to solve issues. We talked about power relations as well, and how nationalism is kind of in the way of a lot of these issues that we're trying to solve. And the sort of balance of economic development and trying not to disrupt local communities. That's something that happens far too often when development is a priority. One of the solutions, for example, was that there needs to be more emphasis placed on multilateral organizations, which will be able to get people together. When I say people, we talked about basically bringing together all of the parties together, regardless of their status or their place, anyone who will be affected. But of course, that is a very difficult thing to do. But it's something that we should definitely be striving for. And we talked about, so for example, how Rotary was one of these examples of organizations where they brought together many, many parties to sort of solve a local environmental issue. We talked about land grabbing from the indigenous peoples. And yeah, just basically to summarize into 2 points from what we talked about, it would be that power relations are something that we need to work on, as well as this ability to bring parties together regardless of their status. As long as they're affected, they should have a voice in the matter. So that's sort of what we covered.
Thank you. Mishi, who's next?
Thank you, Hillary. So we'll have Elizabeth from breakout room 3.
So Elizabeth, is that our group?
Yes, that is.
Okay, I was waiting. Waiting for you, that's fine. Okay, I'm Catherine. I was the reporter. We also had a really great discussion, and thanks to the panelists also that came up with so many good information that we could discuss earlier. The first question, we looked at the importance of local knowledge and the local knowledge base that should be, kind of defining and explaining what is real development and true development. We talked about a lot about also the power over, that a lot of this development is done in that way versus power with, and that the way to kind of deal with that is to build numbers, to mobilize together across communities, across borders in this case for rivers, and then also to have international allies and bridgers. So folks like us that could connect and work in solidarity, but let the local people drive what is needed. The second question, we talked about there's a lot of lack of consultation with corporations. They come in and they have catastrophic impacts with, again, quote, development. Sometimes they may not be aware of what they're doing, but many other times it's about their interest and their benefit to them or to the larger government. And it does seem that they pick kind of on weak areas, populations that aren't as organized or vulnerable populations. And so that seems to be a strategy to do that. There was a really good example from Papua New Guinea of a mining company that one of our members is working on, and they're going to have these big pipes that are going to carry the tailings down to the sea, and they're going to have a huge impact on the ocean where they're going and the populations around that, and so people are trying to organize against that. The last question is, kind of the small scale or local development. And we said that that was the best model that was out there for climate crisis and to be locally driven. However, the problem is the power relationship. So even if you want that model, a lot of times companies and countries get together and do big development projects against the people's will. There was a good example of Kosovo that someone's working in, and she brought up a great example of the Serbs and Albanians, who usually don't get along very well and have had a lot of conflict. They worked together against a company that was coming in and was going to affect their water supply and some of their rivers. And so that actually brought them together working for positive peace because they had like a common goal and a common opponent in that way. And then we just had a final quick discussion about how do you define local. They talked about Native Americans in the US, even people that have lived here a long time, they have been here much longer and might have some wisdom that we need to act in solidarity with. But it can also be something that people argue over. Again, the Balkans' 700-year history, who is the local and who is their longest. So it's better to look at ways to act together in solidarity and more inclusive ways to work together for those local development models. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Good to see you. Amishi, who's next?
We have breakout room 4. Liliana was the facilitator for this breakout room.
Yeah, she took a good summary. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, thank for the wonderful group that was with me in the session in the room 4. And we went from the environmental impacts and both from the countries with borders and without borders. We have 2 Australians or 2 people based in Australia among us. So even when we don't have what we used to think like transboundary rivers, we see the environmental problems related to rivers and how we treat water is the same basically everywhere. So we went from the plastic pollution and how riverine people are affected by pollution and by the consumerism and the way that we treat nature. And departing from this, we try to find ways that we could change or provoke some social change in the environment where we are. So how can we help on positive peace, changing things from where we are? So we went from the environmental and social justice, no? Which means security for all, and that we can have dialogue and understanding, and a good space, an elastic space that can brings every people together and respect the differences in everyone. Also, democracy and the social justice as something that we can practice and promote, granting voice for all. And also, even in the places we cannot have voice sometimes because of the political tensions or differences or minority groups, but we can also do something personally by leading by example and actions, taking a look of our own actions. So that is something that might help us together to find positive peace. And it brings us back to the first question that was looking at our actions, we can track our own pollution and our own damage and try to do those things better for all, because when we harm the environment and each other, we are harming the entire system. That was basically the things. If the group don't, you can just give me a thumb up because there is no thumb down in the reactions. So thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Amishi, who's next? I saw a hand up, I think.
Norman's next for breakout room 5.
Hi, thank you very much indeed. We had a very small group, but we were blessed to have 2 panelists in our group. And the conversation started around deforestation. And most of our discussion was really related to that. Wara mentioned that it's always part, of course, of every project in these river basins, and so it's an inevitable part of the development. Nguyen told us how in Vietnam, the big tension is between jobs and development, and then the effect on the climate, and that there's very little attention paid to climate and future consequences because there's a general lack of knowledge and education around these issues, and everybody is driving for development and more jobs. So we have to find some alternative because people will continue driving for jobs. We also heard that in Bangladesh and in Myanmar, there have been quite successful protections of large mangrove forests. So that's a more positive point if development can be kept out of certain large areas. But in terms of local projects, the only successful local examples that we heard of came in fact from Andrew, that in North Thailand and that sort of area, there have been quite successful local rehabilitation projects. And perhaps this is how we can reconcile the need for jobs with damage to the environment. If damage is going to happen, let's involve local people in repairing it.
Thank you so much, Norman. Amishi, do we have more?
Just the last breakout room. Now we have Nicole from breakout room 6.
Great, thank you.
Hi, hello. We chose a reporter, and it's Warine.
Yes, hello everyone. I think my camera is not working, so you won't be seeing me, but you can hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
From our group, we were about 4 people, and we were able to only discuss question 1. So I'll just have to go through our response, and yep, that's it from me. Yeah, okay. First, we had I think someone, one of our group members from the States. He was talking about the because of the COVID-19, there was some guy who had a project on setting up water sanitation or taps where people could wash their hands, but it was too much that it tends to cause the soap water pollution in the waste. And it got the attention of the council, and from his perspective, there is still need for certain policies to see how they cope with this now that the COVID-19 has caused some things that we do, that it has also have some impact on the environment. So that is his from his example from his local context. I'm from Papua New Guinea, so I also said my context as well from the Pacific. I think one of the present also mentioned regarding that deep sea tailing of the dumping of the mining waste in the sea, and that is a huge concern for us from the Pacific. And even a country that is made up of about 80% of indigenous people that has the rights to the land legally, and then the company comes in, and we still in our country, we don't have proper laws that protects the environment, especially in the dumping of mining waste in the rivers and in the seas. And we in the Pacific, that most people depend on the sea or depend on the river for life, and then they make deals with those resource owners along the mining site, near the mining site, and they disregard those who are far or would be impacted indirectly in the near future. So such policies are not in place, and it is one of our advocacy to have this such law that protects the environment. That is most people, 80% of the population are not in the formal sector, but in the informal sectors in the rural areas. So they depend on this for life and for living. So that is from the laws are not that is present. And the last person shared something on youth having the voice of the young people, the generation. There is a generational gap between young and the old people in terms of peace building, and in the communities, young people's voice are not heard mostly by the older generations, and there's still room, so many gaps between these two generations in order for us to move forward in the community to enable peace building. And all the young people are also players in peace building, which most of the time neglected and not considered. So I think shared in our group, and I could summarize them all for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Warime. You touched on a very important topic on the mining and the waste that's coming in the Pacific region, and also linking up with climate change. Very good. Andrew, would you like to take over?
I would. Thank you so much, Rama. Well, we have just a few minutes here, about 5 minutes maybe, where we can ask some questions of our panelists. So we're hoping that in the breakout rooms, something triggered inside of you a little bit, and you might have an additional question to ask. Also, it's an opportunity to focus on action steps. We heard a lot of things, I'll summarize in a minute, that you could take inside your local context. You may have other ideas you want to share, partnerships you formed in your breakout room, or ideas for networks, ideas for projects that you might want to collaborate with someone else from your breakout discussion or a panelist. So feel free to share those as well. Any questions for the panelists or any ideas about action steps?
I see that Liana has actually put forth some suggestion for collaborations with Latin America. Those interested can actually be in touch with her on that. Has anyone posted any questions using the WUWA app?
Yes, we do have some.
Yeah, how about we take questions from there? Yes.
So we'll ask, well, I see Shining is still here and Wara as well.
Yes.
These are questions that were posted to the app earlier today for you. Question number one, the increasing quest for development and globalization remains a threat to environmental conservation and peace, especially for indigenous people. How do we reconcile the tension between globalization, the quest for globalization, and the need to protect the environment? That's a bit broad. Would either of you care to talk about the tension between the push for globalization, you might have to define what that is, and protection for the environment?
Any of our panelists taking the question?
I think either of them could comment on that probably.
Yes, can I comment? Or can I answer this question?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Now I think we are going for the development trends. We focus more about the economic growth, but we tend to forget about the environmental issue and the indigenous people, the social cohesion. I think if whenever we discuss or we design the project, the development, the developer, as well as the policymaker, they should consider about when we talk about projects, development project, we should orienting about sustainable developments perspective, like inclusively think about the people wise, and also we should also think about the cost of the environmental cost and the social cost. More often whenever the project is designed, they only think about the actual cost, but not really think about the how to say, the environmental cost and social cost. That is why the indigenous people voice are being ignored. So if we have a proper policy about thinking about social issue, environmental issue into the accurate cost, it is going to be something change for the development trends. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Shani.
Yeah. Thank you, Shani. We've got one question from Catherine. She's interested to know about the kind of community or campaign members training the panelists are doing in the communities to raise awareness, help mobilize, teach local documentation and research to engage youth. Maybe any of the panelists who have done similar projects with community, children and youth could share some light on that.
I'm happy to answer that one, if I may share some of the experience. Community organizing, it's one of the actually strategies when we work with the communities to talk with them about the impacts of a certain project. For example, if we work on a coal power plant, it would be good to raise awareness about the impacts in terms of emissions. What is the emission from the coal power plant? What are the impacts to the community health? And if the emissions would, for example, carries any heavy metals that are damaging the health. This is one of the projects in Laos that we work at the border between Thailand and Laos. And the coal power plant is just 10 kilometers from that border in Laos PDR. So raising awareness about the impact of large-scale project is one of the fundamental, and it's one of the strategies that we come up with. But secondly, it's very important to actually not using all these fancy terminologies, but try to frame it in a way that understood by the local communities, and the impact is directly linked to their livelihoods in the at the current stage and in the future as well. For example, imagine one day that they're lead contamination in their blood system, and that would damage so many things. Or any contamination in their farmland, the rice, and even rice is one of the basic food before in our Southeast Asian nations. Raising awareness and using lay language through publication and media that easily understood through videos or through anything that the community could understood, meet them very often to talk about the status of the projects are some of the example. The other thing is,
sorry, I apologize for interrupting. Our panel's finishing in about a minute here, and other people are going to use the room.
Yep.
So
I stop right there.
Next time I see you in person, remember where we left off, because I would love to continue this conversation with you.
Yes. So, I mean, before we wrap up, we should be able to connect through the WOWA app. You know, you can still connect through with other delegates, other speakers over there. Thank you so much for making time this session. Andrew, maybe just quick wrap
Yes,
up.
I just wanted to summarize very quickly. We were talking about action steps and what was coming out of the breakout room discussions. And what I heard was increasing the voices of local people, asking what is local and being sure to be inclusive, increased use of multilateral organizations, asking what is our relationship with the rest of the natural world, local rehabilitation, local conservation projects, create livelihoods and also environmental sustainability, focusing on that, and the need for policies. And as far as an action step that we can take in general, in addition to our local context, when we talk about multilateral organizations and developing local projects, we have a platform here through the Rotary Peace Fellow Association and Rotary International, the clubs around the world. So I invite you all, I'm gonna put my email address in the chat here. This platform is available. You have Rotary clubs and Peace Fellows somewhere near you, for sure. We can have more interactions like this. We can leverage this platform for the benefit of all of you. It's already there. And so invite all of you to reach out if you have ideas for future collaboration. Rama, do you have any other comments before we close?
I think we've pretty much wrapped up everything. I think I see that lots of people are willing to share a lot of ideas and to connect. Oh, I've been muted. Can you hear me now? Great.
Yes.
So I see that lots of ideas are actually flowing in. People want to be collaborative. I know. Please keep in touch through the events page that you've seen, through the Facebook, or through the email that has been shared, or go to the WOWA app where you see our bio data. You can drop a message through there. Okay. Some of us are sharing links. I think due to time constraint, we can't take all the questions. Let's keep this going. You know, let's keep up with the energy here.
Thank you, Shining. Thank you, Wara. Hope to see you all again soon. Thank you to our tech team and our facilitators.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for making time. It's a beautiful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.